The transport ship Stellar Horizon hummed with nervous energy as it approached the Kepler station. Among the 100 recruits crammed into the cargo bay, Maya Chen sat in perfect stillness, her dark eyes fixed on the metal floor beneath her boots. While others chatted excitedly or nervously about their upcoming assignments to the Galactic Defense Corps, she remained silent, her breathing steady and controlled. "Look at the human," whispered Zexthera, a towering Vectani warrior whose blue-scaled hide gleamed under the artificial lights. His species was known throughout the galaxy for their combat prowess, standing nearly 8 feet tall with razor-sharp claws and natural armor plating. "She looks like she's about to faint from fear." His companion, a bulky Gornith named Krull, chuckled with a sound like grinding stones. The Gornith were famous for their incredible strength, capable of crushing steel with their bare hands. "Humans are weak creatures. I heard they come from a low-gravity world with no natural predators. What could such a soft species possibly contribute to our forces?" Maya's fingers twitched slightly, but her expression never changed. She had heard variations of these comments throughout her journey to the recruitment center. Most aliens viewed humans as a curiosity at best, a liability at worst. The Galactic Defense Corps had only recently accepted human recruits, and the decision remained controversial among the established warrior races. Commander Thexmol, a distinguished Altarian with 4 arms and silver skin, entered the cargo bay. His multiple eyes swept over the assembled recruits as he began his briefing. "Welcome to Kepler Station, the premier training facility for the Galactic Defense Corps. Over the next 6 months, you will be pushed beyond your limits. Many of you will fail. Some of you may not survive." A shiver ran through the group. Maya noticed how several recruits straightened their postures, trying to look brave. She remained motionless. "Your first trial begins immediately upon arrival," Thexmol continued. "You will face the combat assessment arena. This test will determine your initial ranking within your training cohort. Those who perform poorly will be assigned to support roles. Those who excel will join the warrior track." Zexthera grinned, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. He had trained for this moment his entire life, following the ancient warrior traditions of his people. Victory in combat was not just expected but guaranteed by his superior biology and generations of selective breeding for warfare. As the ship docked, Maya finally moved. She stood slowly, her movements economical and precise. At 5 feet 6 inches, she was dwarfed by most of the other recruits. Her plain brown hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her training uniform hung loosely on her slight frame. Everything about her suggested weakness and vulnerability. The recruits filed off the ship and through the gleaming corridors of Kepler Station. The facility was massive, built into an asteroid and expanded over centuries to accommodate thousands of trainees. Holographic displays showed the honored graduates who had gone on to defend the galaxy against various threats, their alien features proud and fierce. Maya noticed that not a single human face appeared among the heroes. They were led to the combat assessment arena, a circular chamber with walls of reinforced transparent aluminum. Hundreds of viewing platforms surrounded the combat floor, already filled with instructors and senior trainees eager to evaluate the newcomers. The arena itself was equipped with various obstacles, weapons racks, and terrain features that could be reconfigured for different combat scenarios. "The rules are simple," announced Instructor Valkaris, a scarred Nexian veteran whose cybernetic eye glowed red in the dim lighting. "Each recruit will face a combat drone program to match your species' typical capabilities. Defeat it using any means necessary. Weapons are available, but not required. You have 5 minutes maximum." One by one, recruits entered the arena. The first was a young Vectani who moved with fluid grace, his claws extending as he faced the sleek combat drone. The machine activated with a soft hum, its sensors locking onto the target. Without hesitation, the Vectani leaped forward, using his natural agility to dodge the drone's energy blasts while closing the distance. His claws found purchase in the machine's armor, and, within 90 seconds, sparks flew as he tore through its vital components. The watching crowd murmured appreciatively. The Gornith recruit who followed demonstrated his species' legendary strength, simply grabbing the drone and crushing it like an empty can despite its attempts to escape. An Altarian recruit used her forearms to overwhelm her opponent with coordinated attacks from multiple angles. Each performance followed predictable patterns based on the recruit's species characteristics. The instructors took notes, assigning preliminary rankings based on speed, technique, and raw power. Everything proceeded exactly as expected. Maya Chen, human, called Valkaris, consulting his datapad. The arena fell silent as Maya stepped through the entry portal. She walked to the center of the combat area with the same measured pace she had maintained since boarding the transport. Her dark eyes swept across the weapons rack, taking inventory of plasma rifles, blade weapons, and energy shields. She selected nothing. "Is she going to fight unarmed?" someone whispered from the viewing platforms. "Humans have no natural weapons," another voice replied. "No claws, no armor, no enhanced strength." What is she thinking? Maya positioned herself in the exact center of the arena and closed her eyes. The combat drone materialized 20 meters away, its sensors immediately scanning her for threats. Finding none, it began its approach with standard tactical protocols, energy weapon charging with a high-pitched whine. The drone fired a warning shot past her head, designed to trigger fight-or-flight responses. Maya didn't flinch. Her breathing remained deep and steady, as if she were meditating in a peaceful garden rather than facing a machine designed to test her combat capabilities. "What is she doing?" Zexthara hissed to his companions. The human has frozen with fear. The drone moved closer, now within optimal firing range. Its weapons systems locked onto her center mass, preparing for a non-lethal but incapacitating energy blast. Standard protocol called for the recruit to react defensively at this point, either by taking cover, returning fire, or attempting to close distance for melee combat. Maya opened her eyes. What happened next defied everything the observers thought they knew about human capabilities. In a movement so fluid it seemed almost supernatural, Maya shifted her weight and pivoted slightly to her left. The drone's energy blast missed her by millimeters, the superheated plasma passing through the space where she had been standing a fraction of a second earlier. The machine immediately recalculated, firing again. Maya moved like water, her body flowing around the attack with minimal effort. She began walking toward the drone, each step perfectly timed to avoid its increasingly rapid fire. The machine's targeting systems struggled to predict her movements, which followed no recognizable pattern yet somehow anticipated every attack. "Impossible," breathed Commander Thexmol from his observation post. "The drone is firing at maximum capacity. Nothing should be able to avoid that many shots at close range." Maya closed the distance with hypnotic grace. The drone, programmed with combat data from hundreds of species, had no reference point for her movement style. Its sensors registered her approach but couldn't calculate an effective countermeasure. She seemed to exist in the gaps between its targeting solutions. When she reached the machine, Maya didn't attack with brute force or exotic weaponry. Instead, she placed one hand gently on its central processing unit and applied pressure at a precise point. There was a soft click as an access panel that even the instructors didn't know existed popped open. With surgical precision, she disconnected a single fiber optic cable. The combat drone froze mid-motion, its weapons powering down as its central systems went offline. Total elapsed time, 47 seconds. The arena remained silent for a long moment. Maya stepped back from the deactivated machine and returned to the center of the combat area, her hands clasped behind her back. Her breathing was still calm and controlled, as if the entire encounter had required no more effort than a casual stroll. "How did she know about that access panel?" whispered one instructor to another. "That's classified engineering data." "And those movements," added Valkaris, his cybernetic eye recording and analyzing the footage. "I've never seen anything like it." She seemed to predict every attack before the drone even fired. From the recruit viewing area, Zexthara stared in disbelief. "That's impossible. Humans are supposed to be weak. They have no enhanced reflexes, no natural armor, no inherited combat instincts. How did she do that?" Maya remained motionless in the arena center, waiting for permission to leave. Her dark eyes were calm and patient, showing no trace of pride or excitement at her performance. She might have been waiting for a bus rather than standing in the aftermath of the most impressive combat assessment in recent memory. Instructor Valkaris finally found his voice.
Recruit Chen, report to Briefing Room 7 for advanced evaluation. All other recruits, continue with standard processing.
As Maya walked past the weapons rack toward the exit, several recruits tried to catch her eye, hoping for some acknowledgement or explanation. She moved past them without a word, her expression unchanged from the moment she had first boarded the transport ship. The implications of her performance rippled through the observation deck. For generations, the Galactic Defense Corps had operated on the assumption that certain species were naturally superior warriors while others were better suited for support roles. Humans had been tentatively accepted as potential engineers and medics, but never as frontline fighters.
Maya's 47 seconds in the arena had just shattered every assumption about human combat potential. Commander Thexmol reviewed the recorded footage for the third time, his multiple eyes tracking Maya's impossible movements.
Run a full analysis of her technique, he ordered his staff.
I want to understand how she did that.
Sir, replied his aide, preliminary scans show no cybernetic enhancements, no hidden weapons, no use of personal energy fields. According to all our measurements, she's completely baseline human. Then, explain how a baseline human just defeated a combat drone designed to challenge trained warriors.
The aide hesitated. We can't, sir. By every metric we use to evaluate combat capability, what she just did should be impossible.
In Briefing Room 7, Maya sat across from a panel of senior instructors, her posture as composed as ever. The room was stark and functional, with bare metal walls and a single table. Recording devices captured every word and movement for later analysis.
Recruit Chen, began Instructor Valkaris, your performance in the combat assessment arena was unexpected. Can you explain your technique?
I observed the drone's operational patterns and responded accordingly, Maya replied, her voice quiet but clear.
You observed its patterns in less than 10 seconds? Yes. And the access panel you used to deactivate it. How did you know about that?
Maya was quiet for a moment, considering her response. The design was similar to training equipment I had encountered previously.
Where did you encounter such equipment? Our records show no previous military service. I prefer not to discuss my background in detail.
The instructors exchanged glances. Maya's official file was remarkably sparse, containing only basic biographical information and her scores on the standard aptitude tests. Her performance on those tests had been good but not exceptional, certainly not indicating the level of capability she had just demonstrated.
Recruit Chen, the Galactic Defense Corps values transparency. If you have relevant training or experience, it needs to be documented. Maya's dark eyes met each instructor's gaze in turn. My previous experience is not relevant to my current assignment. I am here to serve as directed.
Her tone was respectful but firm. It was clear that she would not be providing additional information about her background, regardless of how many questions they asked. After an hour of careful questioning that yielded no additional insights, the instructors dismissed Maya with instructions to report to Advanced Training Block C the following morning. As she left the briefing room, they could hear heated discussions already beginning about how to classify and train a recruit who had just redefined their understanding of human potential.
Back in the recruit barracks, word of Maya's performance had spread quickly.
Clusters of trainees from various species gathered around data tablets, watching recorded footage of her encounter with the combat drone. The video had been slowed to quarter speed, but her movements still seemed impossibly fluid.
She must have some kind of enhancement, insisted Krull, the Gornath recruit.
No natural creature moves like that.
The scan showed she was completely baseline, replied Yxandra, an insectoid Thrix whose compound eyes could detect subtle energy signatures that most other species missed. Whatever she did, it was entirely biological. Zexthera remained silent, his warrior's pride stung by the human's effortless victory.
He had trained since childhood in the ancient combat forms of his people, pushing his body to the limits of Vectani capability. Yet this small, quiet human had accomplished something that seemed beyond the reach of any of the established warrior races. Maya entered the barracks and moved toward her assigned bunk with the same measured pace she had maintained all day.
Conversations stopped as she passed, hundreds of eyes tracking her movement.
She gave no sign of noticing the attention, simply organizing her few possessions and preparing for sleep. "Hey, human," called Zexthera, unable to contain his curiosity any longer.
What fighting style was that?
Maya turned to face him, her expression neutral.
I don't know what you mean. In the arena. Those movements. What martial art teaches techniques like that?
I moved to avoid being hit and, then, disabled the machine.
Nothing more complicated than that. Her matter-of-fact tone was somehow more unsettling than if she had boasted about her abilities.
She spoke as if her impossible performance had been the most natural thing in the world.
Zexthara persisted.
But, the way you predicted its attacks, the precision of your movements, the knowledge of its weak point.
That level of skill doesn't just appear from nowhere. Maya studied his face for a moment, as if considering how much to reveal. Every machine has patterns. Every design has vulnerabilities.
You just need to observe carefully.
And, you learned this through observation alone? Among other things. Before Zexthara could ask follow-up questions, Maya turned away and began preparing for sleep.
The conversation was clearly over.
As lights dimmed in the barracks, whispered discussions continued throughout the night. Theories ranged from secret human military programs to genetic modifications to pure luck.
None of the explanations felt adequate to explain what they had witnessed. Maya lay in her bunk, staring at the ceiling with the same calm expression she had worn all day.
Unlike her fellow recruits, she wasn't puzzling over her performance or wondering what tomorrow would bring.
She had come to Kepler Station with a specific purpose, and today had been merely the first step in accomplishing it. In the deepest levels of the station, Commander Thexmol met with his senior staff to discuss the implications of Maya's assessment. The conference room was secured against all forms of surveillance, and the holographic display showed detailed analysis of her combat performance.
The technical staff has confirmed it, reported Chief Instructor Zelmoth, an elderly Nexian whose cybernetic enhancements glowed softly in the dim lighting. She accessed a maintenance port that isn't even shown in most technical manuals. The knowledge required to locate and use it suggests extensive familiarity with advanced combat systems. Or excellent pattern recognition and intuition, countered Instructor Velcaris. Humans are known for creative problem-solving abilities.
Not at this level, Thexmol replied firmly.
What we witnessed today goes far beyond standard human capabilities.
The question is whether this represents an isolated case or if humans have been significantly underestimated as a species.
The implications were staggering.
If Maya's abilities were representative of hidden human potential, it would require a complete reassessment of their role in the Galactic Defense Corps.
More importantly, it raised questions about what other capabilities humans might possess that had been overlooked or dismissed. There's another possibility, said Zelmoth quietly. What if she's not just a recruit? What if she's here for reasons we don't understand? The room fell silent as the instructors considered this possibility.
Maya's background file was unusually sparse, her arrival at Kepler Station following channels that were technically correct but somehow felt orchestrated. Her performance suggested training and knowledge that should not exist in a civilian recruit. For now, we proceed with her training as scheduled, decided Thexmol. But I want her monitored closely. If Recruit Chen is hiding something, we need to understand what it is and whether it represents a threat to station security. As the meeting concluded and the instructors dispersed to their quarters, none of them noticed the small surveillance device that had been carefully placed in the conference room's ventilation system. The device transmitted a brief data burst to a receiver hidden elsewhere in the station before automatically dissolving into component atoms, leaving no trace of its existence. Somewhere in the depths of Kepler Station, Maya's true handler received the intelligence report and smiled slightly. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. The human recruit was performing her role perfectly, revealing just enough of her capabilities to attract attention while concealing the true scope of her abilities and mission. The Galactic Defense Corps believed they were training a promising new recruit. They had no idea they were about to encounter the most dangerous human operative in the galaxy. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to gather intelligence. Maya would continue her careful masquerade, playing the role of the quiet, mysterious recruit while systematically mapping the station's defenses and identifying key personnel. But tonight, as she lay in her bunk surrounded by sleeping aliens who viewed her as in curiosity, Maya allowed herself a moment of satisfaction.
The first phase of her mission was complete. She had successfully infiltrated the Galactic Defense Corps' premier training facility and demonstrated enough capability to gain access to advanced training programs. Soon, she would have the access and positioning she needed to complete her true objective. The fate of humanity depended on the intelligence she could gather here, and she had never failed a mission yet. The galaxy was about to learn that humans were far more dangerous than anyone had ever imagined. #Human Girl stayed quiet in combat. Part 2. 3 weeks had passed since Maya's extraordinary performance in the combat assessment arena, and Advanced Training Block C had become a crucible of escalating challenges. The facility housed only the top 50 recruits from the initial assessment, representing the elite candidates for frontline warrior positions within the Galactic Defense Corps. Maya moved through her daily routines with the same quiet precision that had marked her arrival. Each morning brought new combat scenarios, tactical simulations, and physical challenges designed to push the recruits beyond their species' natural limitations. While others struggled and adapted, Maya seemed to glide through each trial with an almost supernatural ease that both impressed and unnerved her instructors. "Today we test your abilities under extreme stress," announced Instructor HFY, a massive draconian whose scaled hide bore the scars of countless battles. His species was among the most feared warriors in the galaxy, standing nearly 9 feet tall with natural flame generation capabilities. "You will face the Proving Maze, a multi-level combat environment designed to simulate real battlefield conditions." The Proving Maze was Kepler Station's most challenging training facility, a three-dimensional labyrinth filled with automated defenses, environmental hazards, and adaptive AI opponents. Most recruits required multiple attempts to complete even the basic configuration. Only the most exceptional students ever attempted the advanced levels. Each recruit will enter alone and must reach the central extraction point within 2 hours, HFY continued. "You may use any equipment available in the maze, but remember that your opponents will adapt to your tactics. What works once may not work twice." Zexthera stepped forward first, his blue scales gleaming under the facility's harsh lighting. Over the past 3 weeks, he had watched Maya's continued success with growing frustration and fascination. Despite his pride in Vectani warrior traditions, he couldn't deny that the human had demonstrated abilities that challenged everything he thought he knew about combat effectiveness. "I volunteer to go first," he declared, his voice carrying the confidence of generations of warrior breeding. "Acceptable," replied HFY. "Standard configuration. Begin when ready." The massive blast doors opened to reveal a dimly lit corridor stretching into the distance. Zexthera entered with fluid grace, his enhanced senses immediately cataloging potential threats. The doors sealed behind him with a resonant clang, and holographic displays activated to show the observing recruits his progress through the maze. For the first several minutes, Zexthera performed exactly as expected. His natural agility allowed him to navigate the maze's physical obstacles with ease, while his razor-sharp claws made short work of the combat drones that emerged from hidden alcoves. His warrior training served him well as he systematically cleared each corridor and advanced toward the center. Then, the maze began to adapt. The AI controlling the facility had been analyzing Zexthera's movement patterns, identifying his preferred tactics and natural reflexes. When he encountered the next wave of opponents, they had been specifically programmed to counter Vectani combat styles. Energy shields deflected his claw attacks while new drone configurations matched his speed and agility. The watching recruits observed as Zexthera's confident advance slowed to a grinding struggle. Each chamber now required careful planning and multiple attempts to clear. His natural advantages had been neutralized through the maze's adaptive programming, forcing him to rely purely on skill and determination. After 97 minutes of increasingly desperate combat, Zexthera finally reached the extraction point, bloody and exhausted. The other recruits cheered his success, understanding the immense challenge he had overcome. "Impressive performance," acknowledged HFY. "The maze adapted to your tactics 4 times, yet you still succeeded through persistence and tactical flexibility. Well done." 3 more recruits attempted the maze over the following hours, each demonstrating their species' particular strengths and weaknesses. A Gornith recruit powered through obstacles with brute force until the maze countered with energy barriers that couldn't be physically destroyed. An Altarian used her 4-armed coordination to great effect until facing opponents specifically designed to overwhelm multiple appendage fighters.
Each attempt provided valuable data to both the instructors and the maze's AI systems. By the time afternoon training concluded, the facility had recorded detailed profiles of multiple combat styles and adaptive strategies.
Tomorrow we increase the difficulty, announced Kexviral as the session ended.
Advanced configuration.
Recruit Chen, you will attempt the maze first.
Maya acknowledged the assignment with a simple nod, her expression as unreadable as ever. While other recruits spent their evening analyzing footage of successful maze runs and planning strategies, she simply reviewed her equipment and prepared for sleep.
Aren't you going to study the recordings? Asked Yxandra, the insectoid Thrix whose analytical mind had identified several tactical patterns in the maze's adaptive responses.
I saw what I needed to see during today's runs, Maya replied calmly.
But the advanced configuration will be completely different. New obstacles, more sophisticated opponents, environmental hazards we haven't seen yet. Maya's dark eyes met the alien's compound gaze. Every system has underlying principles.
Understanding those principles is more valuable than memorizing specific scenarios.
Her cryptic response left Yxandra even more puzzled, but Maya had already turned away to continue her preparations.
The insectoid recruit had begun to suspect that the human was operating on a completely different level of tactical thinking than the rest of them. The following morning brought news that sent ripples of excitement and concern through Advanced Training Block C. Chief Instructor Zalmoth arrived with an announcement that no one had expected.
By special authorization from Command, today's maze trial will be observed by General Vaxthal of the Nexian Defense Fleet, he declared.
The general is evaluating advanced training protocols and has specifically requested to observe Recruit Chen's performance. Maya showed no visible reaction to this news, but several astute observers noticed the slight tightening around her eyes. General Vaxthal was one of the most decorated military leaders in the galaxy, a strategic genius whose tactical innovations had shaped modern warfare. His presence suggested that Maya's abilities had attracted attention at the highest levels of the galactic military hierarchy. The observation deck filled with senior staff and visiting dignitaries as Maya prepared for her maze attempt.
General Vaxthal himself was an imposing figure, his cybernetic enhancements gleaming against dark Nexian skin. Multiple mechanical eyes tracked independently as he studied tactical displays and reviewed Maya's previous performance data.
Interesting, he murmured to Commander Thexmol. Her assessment scores suggest competent but not exceptional abilities, yet eyewitness reports describe techniques that border on the impossible. I'm curious to see which version proves accurate.
Maya stood before the maze entrance, wearing standard training gear with no special equipment or enhancements.
The advanced configuration was known to challenge even experienced warriors, featuring multi-dimensional movement requirements, adaptive environmental hazards, and AI opponents with learning capabilities that rivaled sentient strategists.
Advanced configuration active, announced the facility's automated systems.
All safety protocols engaged.
Begin when ready.
Maya stepped through the entrance without hesitation, and the blast doors sealed behind her. The observing dignitaries leaned forward as holographic displays activated to track her progress through the complex three-dimensional structure. The first chamber contained what appeared to be a straightforward corridor with several combat drones patrolling in predictable patterns. Most recruits would spend time analyzing the patrol routes and planning an approach that minimized exposure to hostile fire.
Maya simply walked directly down the center of the corridor.
The combat drones detected her immediately and opened fire with coordinated energy blasts designed to overwhelm any single target. Maya moved like flowing water, her body seeming to exist in the spaces between enemy fire patterns. She reached the first drone before its targeting systems could compensate and disabled it with the same precise technique she had demonstrated during her initial assessment.
Remarkable, breathed General Vaxthal.
She's not avoiding their fire through speed or agility.
She's predicting their targeting algorithms and moving to positions they can't hit.
The second and third drones fell just as quickly, their sophisticated AI systems unable to develop effective countermeasures against Maya's impossible movement patterns. She proceeded to the next chamber without having taken a single hit or shown any signs of stress.
The maze's adaptive systems immediately began recalibrating.
If standard targeting algorithms were ineffective, it would try a different approach. The next chamber filled with a dense energy fog that blocked most forms of vision while automated weapons fired randomly throughout the space. Maya paused at the entrance, her head tilted slightly as if listening to something only she could hear. Then, she began walking through the fog with the same confident pace she had maintained in the previous chamber. Energy blasts passed within inches of her body, but somehow none found their target. "How is she navigating through that?" demanded one of the observing instructors.
"Thermal imaging shows dozens of weapon emplacements firing continuously."
"She's reading the acoustic patterns," realized General Vaxthal, his multiple eyes tracking Maya's path through the maze. "The energy weapons create specific sound signatures when they charge and fire. She's using audio cues to map the entire chamber and predict where each blast will occur."
The implications were staggering.
Such spatial awareness and pattern recognition suggested cognitive abilities far beyond typical human baselines.
Maya was demonstrating skills that even advanced AI systems would struggle to replicate. Chamber after chamber fell before her methodical advance. Environmental hazards that should have required careful planning were bypassed with seemingly effortless grace.
Adaptive opponents that learned from previous encounters found themselves facing techniques they had never been programmed to counter. In one memorable sequence, Maya encountered a group of holographic opponents designed to mimic the combat styles of various galactic species. The holograms had been programmed with the accumulated tactical knowledge of hundreds of warrior traditions, making them formidable opponents even for experienced soldiers. Maya studied them for exactly 12 seconds, then moved. What followed was a demonstration of combat artistry that left the observers speechless. She flowed between the holographic warriors like a dancer, each movement serving multiple purposes simultaneously. A dodge that avoided one opponent's strike positioned her perfectly to disable another. A seemingly defensive posture became the opening for a devastating counterattack. The hologram's adaptive programming struggled to keep pace with her unconventional techniques. Traditional combat forms relied on recognizable patterns that could be analyzed and countered. Maya's fighting style appeared to have no fixed pattern at all, instead flowing like water around whatever obstacles she encountered. "I've never seen anything like this," whispered instructor Kex Viral to his colleagues. "She's not using any martial art I recognize, but she's dismantling opponents that should require entire squads to defeat." "It's not just technique," added instructor Valkaris, his cybernetic eye recording every moment of Maya's performance. "Watch how she moves through the environment. She's using three-dimensional space in ways that shouldn't be possible for a bipedal species." Maya had indeed begun incorporating the maze's vertical elements into her movement patterns. She flowed up walls and across ceilings with the same fluid grace she demonstrated on level ground, as if gravity were merely a suggestion rather than a physical law. Her small frame became an advantage in the tight confines of the maze's upper reaches. As she progressed deeper into the facility, the challenges escalated beyond anything that had been attempted by previous recruits. The maze's AI began combining multiple hazard types simultaneously, creating scenarios that required split-second decisions and perfect execution to survive. Maya adapted to each new challenge with the same calm efficiency she had shown from the beginning. A chamber filled with mobile energy barriers and gravity fluctuations became a three-dimensional puzzle she solved in moments. A corridor lined with adaptive minds that learned from failed detonation attempts was cleared using techniques that seemed to violate basic physics. "How long has she been in there?" asked General Vaxthal, consulting his chronometer. 37 minutes, replied Commander Thexmol. "She's moving through the advanced configuration faster than most recruits complete the basic version." "And the maze's adaptation protocols?" "Fully active, but they can't establish effective counters. Every time the system develops a response to her techniques, she shifts to something completely different." The observation deck had fallen silent except for the quiet hum of recording equipment. Every instructor, every dignitary, every senior staff member watched the holographic displays with rapt attention as Maya continued her impossible journey through challenges that should have defeated her within minutes. Then, she reached the final chamber. The extraction point was located at the center of a spherical room 50 meters in diameter. The only entrance was a narrow bridge extending from the door to a platform in the exact center of the space. Surrounding the platform were dozens of autonomous defense systems, each equipped with different weapon types and programmed with independent tactical algorithms. Standard protocol called for recruits to fight their way across the bridge while under constant fire from all directions. Even the most skilled warriors required multiple attempts to reach the extraction point, and many never succeeded at all. Maya stood at the bridge's entrance for a full minute, her dark eyes tracking the movement patterns of every defense system in the chamber. The watching observers held their breath, wondering if she had finally encountered a challenge that would force her to retreat. Then, she smiled. It was the first time anyone had seen her display any emotion since arriving at Kepler Station. The smile was small and fleeting, but it transformed her entire expression from neutral calm to something that made several observers instinctively step back from their displays. Maya stepped onto the bridge and began walking toward the center platform at her usual measured pace. Every defense system in the chamber opened fire simultaneously, creating a storm of energy beams, projectiles, and exotic weapons effects that should have vaporized any target within seconds.
Maya danced through the chaos like a conductor leading a symphony.
She moved in 3 dimensions now, using the bridge's support cables and the chamber's structural elements to create a movement pattern that defied comprehension. Energy blasts passed through spaces she had occupied microseconds earlier.
Projectiles found empty air where her body should have been.
But, more than simple evasion, Maya seemed to be conducting the defensive system's fire patterns, drawing their targeting solutions into configurations that caused them to interfere with each other. Overlapping fields of fire began creating dead zones that she exploited with perfect timing.
"She's turning their defensive grid against itself," breathed General Vaxthal in amazement.
Those systems were designed to provide mutual support, but she's forcing them to create interference patterns.
Within minutes, several defense systems had actually disabled each other through misdirected fire.
Maya reached the extraction point having never been touched by a single shot, despite moving through what should have been an impenetrable wall of destruction.
Total elapsed time, 43 minutes, 17 seconds. A new facility record by a margin that would likely never be equaled. The blast doors opened to admit Maya back to the observation area.
She walked through as if returning from a casual stroll, her breathing still calm and controlled. Her training uniform was unmarked, and she showed no signs of the stress or fatigue that typically followed maze attempts.
"Recruit Chen," said General Vaxthal, his multiple eyes studying her with intense interest, "that was a remarkable performance. I have some questions about your techniques."
"Thank you, sir," Maya replied with perfect military courtesy. "I'm available for debriefing as required."
"Indeed. I think we need to have a very detailed conversation about your background and training."
For just a moment, something flickered in Maya's dark eyes. Those who were watching carefully might have detected a hint of calculation, as if she were rapidly evaluating new variables in a complex equation.
"Of course, sir. I'm here to serve as directed." But General Vaxthal was no ordinary military officer.
His cybernetic enhancements included cognitive analysis systems that could detect microexpressions and behavioral patterns invisible to organic observers. As he studied Maya's responses, sophisticated algorithms flagged subtle inconsistencies that suggested her carefully maintained facade might be hiding something significant. "Excellent," he said with a smile that didn't quite reach his mechanical eyes.
"I believe we have much to discuss."
As the crowd of observers dispersed and Maya was escorted away for her debriefing, excited conversations erupted throughout Advanced Training Block C. Her performance had redefined what anyone thought was possible for a human recruit, and speculation ran wild about her true capabilities and background. But none of the observers noticed the small data packet that had been transmitted from Maya's training uniform during her maze run. Hidden within the fabric's molecular structure was a sophisticated intelligence gathering system that had been systematically mapping the facility's defensive networks and identifying security vulnerabilities. The packet was received by a concealed relay hidden in the station's asteroid substrate and immediately forwarded through encrypted channels to a destination far from Kepler Station. Within hours, Maya's handlers would have detailed intelligence about the Galactic Defense Corps' most advanced training facility, including structural plans, security protocols, and personnel profiles.
Phase 2 of her mission was now complete.
She had successfully demonstrated enough capability to gain access to the highest levels of the Corps' training programs while maintaining her cover as an exceptional but ultimately loyal recruit. But General Vaxthal's arrival had introduced an unexpected variable. His reputation for uncovering hidden threats made him potentially dangerous to her mission. Maya would need to be very careful during the upcoming debriefing to maintain her cover while avoiding detection. As she was led through the station's corridors toward the secured briefing facilities, Maya's mind was already working through contingency plans. She had trained for situations exactly like this, where maintaining her cover required a delicate balance between revealing enough to satisfy suspicions and concealing enough to protect her true mission. The fate of humanity still depended on the intelligence she could gather here, but now she would have to be more careful than ever. One mistake could expose not just her own mission, but the entire network of human operatives working throughout the galaxy. The real test was just beginning. #Human Girl stayed quiet in combat. Part 3. The secured briefing room was unlike any facility Maya had seen during her time at Kepler Station. Located deep within the asteroid's core, it was surrounded by layers of electromagnetic shielding and quantum interference generators designed to prevent any form of surveillance or data transmission. As Maya was escorted inside, she felt her hidden communication systems go silent for the first time since arriving at the station. General Vaxthal waited at a curved table in the center of the room, his cybernetic enhancements casting soft blue light in the dimly lit space. Beside him sat Commander Thexmal and 2 other figures Maya didn't recognize. Their uniforms bore the insignia of galactic intelligence, and their presence suggested that this conversation would go far beyond a standard training debriefing. "Please, sit," invited General Vaxthal, gesturing to a chair across from the panel. His tone was polite but carried an undertone that made it clear this was not actually a request. Maya seated herself with the same composed grace she had maintained throughout her time at the facility. Her dark eyes met each interrogator's gaze briefly before settling into the neutral expression that had become her trademark. "Let me begin with a simple observation," said the general, activating a holographic display that showed footage from Maya's maze run. "What we witnessed today was not simply exceptional performance. It was impossible performance." The hologram replayed key moments from her attempt, slowed to frame-by-frame analysis. Maya watched herself flow through defensive fire patterns with movements that seemed to violate basic physics. "Our analysis indicates that you predicted weapons fire patterns with accuracy exceeding military-grade AI systems," continued one of the intelligence officers. "You demonstrated spatial awareness capabilities that require sensor arrays we know you weren't carrying. Most significantly, you somehow knew about structural elements and access points that aren't shown in any training materials." Maya listened without reaction, her breathing steady and controlled. She had anticipated this level of scrutiny from the moment she decided to reveal advanced capabilities during her assessment. The key now was managing their suspicions without confirming their worst fears. "I observe carefully," she said simply. "Many people miss details that are clearly visible." "Clearly visible?" General Vaxthal leaned forward, his mechanical eyes focusing intently on her face. "Recruit Chen, the access panels you used in both your initial assessment and today's maze run are classified engineering specifications. They're not marked on any blueprint accessible to training personnel." "Then, perhaps your classifications need revision," Maya replied calmly. "If a recruit can identify these features through observation alone, they're not as hidden as you believe." It was a perfectly reasonable response that completely sidestepped the real question. Maya had learned long ago that the best lies contain significant elements of truth. Her observation skills were indeed exceptional, even if they had been enhanced through decades of specialized training that her interrogators knew nothing about. Commander Thexmal activated another display showing detailed biometric readings from Maya's maze attempt. "Your physiological responses during extreme combat stress remained within normal resting parameters," he noted. "Heart rate, respiration, neural activity, muscle tension, everything stayed completely baseline despite facing life-threatening challenges." "I don't find training exercises particularly stressful," Maya answered. "They're controlled environments with known safety protocols. Even so, involuntary stress responses are hardwired into biological systems. What you demonstrated suggests either extensive conditioning or artificial enhancement." Maya allowed a slight smile to cross her features. "Have you considered that human stress responses might be different from what you expect? Your baseline assumptions are derived from studying other species." The comment was carefully calculated to exploit the one area where her interrogator's knowledge was genuinely limited. Humans were still new to the galactic community, and most research on human capabilities remained incomplete. By positioning her performance as a previously unknown aspect of human biology, she could explain away almost any anomaly. General Vaxthol exchanged glances with his colleagues. Maya's point was valid, their understanding of human physiology and psychology was based on relatively limited data. It was possible that they were simply witnessing capabilities that were normal for humans but unprecedented among other species. Let's approach this from a different angle, suggested the second intelligence officer, a tall Nexian whose cybernetic implants covered most of his skull.
Your background file is remarkably sparse.
Basic education, no military service, no advanced training programs. Yet you display skills that typically require years of specialized instruction.
I've always been a quick learner, Maya replied.
And I've had varied life experiences that aren't necessarily reflected in official records.
What kind of experiences? Maya was quiet for a long moment, as if considering how much to reveal. I grew up in regions where self-reliance was necessary for survival.
You learn to observe carefully, move quietly, and think several steps ahead.
Which regions specifically? Rural areas that don't maintain extensive documentation.
The kind of places where people value privacy and practical skills over bureaucratic records. Again, her response was technically truthful while revealing nothing of significance. Maya had indeed grown up in regions where privacy was valued and practical skills were essential. She simply omitted the fact that those regions were classified human military facilities where she had been trained from childhood as part of an elite operative program. The interrogation continued for over 3 hours, with each line of questioning probing different aspects of Maya's background and capabilities. Her responses remained consistent and reasonable, never quite confirming their suspicions but never providing the definitive answers they were seeking. Finally, General Vaxthol leaned back in his chair with a frustrated expression.
Recruit Chen, I'm going to be direct.
Your performance suggests training and capabilities that far exceed what should be possible for a civilian recruit. My experience tells me you're not telling us everything.
Maya met his gaze steadily.
With respect, sir, your experience is based on other species.
Perhaps humans are simply more capable than you've assumed.
And, perhaps, replied the general slowly, humans have been preparing for galactic integration more thoroughly than they've publicly acknowledged. The comment hung in the air like a live grenade.
Maya felt her pulse quicken slightly, the first genuine physiological response she had shown since entering the room.
General Vaxthol's mechanical eyes tracked the minute changes in her expression with perfect precision. I wouldn't know anything about that, Maya said carefully.
I'm here as an individual recruit, not as a representative of human policy.
Of course, agreed the general with a smile that suggested he didn't believe her for a moment. However, given your exceptional abilities, we've decided to accelerate your training program.
He activated a new holographic display showing a facility Maya didn't recognize.
You'll be transferred to the Advanced Tactical Institute on Nexus Prime. It's our most elite training facility, reserved for candidates being prepared for special operations assignments. Maya studied the displayed facility with interest that was only partly feigned. The Advanced Tactical Institute was exactly the kind of target her real mission had been designed to penetrate. Transfer there would provide access to the Galactic Defense Corps' most sensitive programs and classified technologies.
I'm honored by the opportunity, she said with perfect sincerity.
I'm sure you are, replied General Vaxthol dryly.
Transport leaves in 6 hours. You'll have time to collect your belongings and say goodbye to your fellow recruits.
As the briefing concluded and Maya was escorted back to the training blocks, her mind was already working through the implications of this unexpected development.
Transfer to Nexus Prime represented both an opportunity and a significant risk.
She would gain access to intelligence far beyond anything available at Kepler Station, but she would also face scrutiny from the galaxy's most sophisticated security systems.
Word of Maya's transfer spread quickly through Advanced Training Block C.
Her fellow recruits gathered around as she packed her few possessions, their expressions mixing admiration, curiosity, and concern.
The Advanced Tactical Institute, said Zexthera with genuine respect.
That's where they train the warriors who become legends.
Or where promising recruits disappear forever, added Krull grimly. Some say the training is so advanced that minds not ready for it simply break.
Maya paused in her packing to look at the assembled group. These beings had become her companions over the past month, and, despite her hidden agenda, she had developed genuine respect for their dedication and courage. "Thank you all for your friendship," she said quietly. "Train hard, fight well, and remember that strength comes in many forms." It was perhaps the longest speech any of them had heard her make, and the unexpected warmth in her voice made several recruits straighten with pride.
Even Yxandra's compound eyes seemed to brighten at the acknowledgement.
As Maya shouldered her pack and headed toward the transport bay, she caught sight of Instructor Velkaris watching from a nearby doorway. Their eyes met briefly, and she saw something unexpected in his cybernetic gaze, not suspicion or wariness, but what looked almost like approval. "Good hunting, Recruit Chen," he said quietly as she passed. The comment could have been interpreted as a standard military farewell, but something in his tone suggested deeper meaning. Maya nodded acknowledgement and continued toward her transport, filing the interaction away for later analysis. The journey to Nexus Prime took 18 hours through hyperspace, giving Maya time to consider her new situation. Her mission parameters had always included the possibility of gaining access to advanced facilities, but she hadn't expected it to happen so quickly or under such intense scrutiny. As her transport approached Nexus Prime, Maya got her first look at the legendary facility through the viewports. The planet was a fortress world, its surface covered with defensive installations and training complexes that could accommodate millions of personnel. The Advanced Tactical Institute occupied a floating platform in the upper atmosphere, connected to the surface by a massive space elevator that gleamed like a silver thread against the cloud layers. The institute itself was a marvel of engineering, a crystalline structure that seemed to shift and flow as atmospheric conditions changed. Maya knew from intelligence briefings that the facility contained some of the most advanced training systems in the galaxy, including full immersion combat simulators that could replicate any battlefield condition with perfect accuracy. Her transport docked at a receiving bay that was itself larger than most space stations. Maya was met by a reception committee that included beings from a dozen different species, all wearing the black and silver uniforms of the Institute staff. Their expressions were professionally neutral, but she could sense the intense scrutiny of their evaluation. "Recruit Chen," said their leader, a tall humanoid with pale blue skin and completely white eyes. "I am Director Synthara. Welcome to the Advanced Tactical Institute." Maya recognized the name from intelligence files. Director Synthara was a legendary figure in military circles, a strategic genius whose tactical innovations had influenced warfare throughout the galaxy. Her presence suggested that Maya's transfer had attracted attention at the very highest levels. "Thank you for the opportunity, Director," Maya replied with appropriate respect. "The opportunity is yours to prove worthy of," came the cool response. "Your preliminary assessment suggests exceptional potential, but potential means nothing without the discipline to develop it properly." Maya was escorted through corridors that seemed to extend infinitely in all directions. The Institute's interior was a maze of training facilities, research laboratories, and living quarters designed to house the galaxy's most elite military personnel. Holographic displays showed current students engaged in training exercises that would challenge experienced warriors. "You'll begin advanced assessment tomorrow," Director Synthara explained as they walked. "Unlike the standardized tests you've experienced previously, these evaluations are individually tailored to push your specific capabilities to their absolute limits." "I understand. I hope you do. Students who fail advanced assessment don't simply wash out of the program. They're typically transferred to remedial facilities where their security clearances are permanently revoked. The knowledge you'll be exposed to here requires absolute commitment." The implied threat was clear, but Maya had faced far worse dangers during her real training. She nodded acknowledgement and continued following her escort through the facility's gleaming corridors. Her assigned quarters were luxurious by military standards, with advanced environmental controls and direct access to the Institute's vast data networks. As soon as she was alone, Maya began a careful survey of her new environment, noting security features and surveillance systems that would need to be circumvented. That evening, she was invited to dine with other advanced students in a common facility that offered spectacular views of Nexus Prime's surface. The assembled group represented the elite of their respective species, individuals who had been selected for the most sensitive and dangerous assignments in the galaxy. "So you're the human everyone is talking about," said a sleek Altarian with 4 cybernetic arms that moved with mechanical precision. Zarkth tells me you accomplished something unprecedented at the Kepler facility.
Maya recognized the name.
Zarkth was another student at the institute whose reputation for tactical analysis was nearly legendary. If he had been discussing her performance with others, word of her capabilities had spread further than she had anticipated. I completed my assigned training exercises, Maya replied neutrally. According to the reports, you redefined what anyone thought those exercises could accomplish, pressed a massive draconian whose scales showed the distinctive patterns of the warrior caste. Combat effectiveness ratings that exceeded theoretical maximums for any known species.
The conversation continued through dinner, with various students probing for information about Maya's background and techniques.
She deflected their questions with the same careful responses she had used during her interrogation, revealing nothing while maintaining the appearance of openness.
But, as the evening progressed, Maya began to notice something troubling.
Several students made casual references to information they shouldn't have known, details about her performance that had been classified during her debriefings. Either security at the institute was far more porous than expected, or there was deliberate information sharing happening at levels she couldn't detect.
After dinner, as students dispersed to their individual quarters, Maya was approached by Zarkth himself.
The Nexian's cybernetic enhancements were more extensive than any she had encountered, covering nearly his entire head with a web of neural interfaces that gleamed silver in the facility's lighting.
"Walk with me," he suggested, gesturing toward a balcony that overlooked the planet's surface.
Maya accompanied him to the observation area, where they stood in comfortable silence for several minutes watching the lights of training exercises far below.
Finally, Zarkth spoke.
"I've been analyzing the tactical data from your maze run," he said quietly.
"The movement patterns, decision trees, spatial awareness capabilities. They're fascinating from a purely academic perspective. I'm glad you found them interesting."
"Interesting enough to run them through some specialized analysis systems," he continued.
"Systems designed to identify combat techniques and their probable origins."
Maya felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. Advanced pattern recognition systems were one of the few technologies that might be able to identify traces of her real training. The results were puzzling, Zarkth went on. "Your techniques don't match any known martial art or combat system in our databases. But, they do show remarkable similarity to theoretical frameworks that have been developed for optimal combat effectiveness."
Theoretical frameworks?
Mathematical models of what perfect combat techniques might look like if they could be developed without the limitations imposed by natural evolution or traditional training methods. Maya kept her expression neutral, but, internally she was calculating escape routes and contingency plans. If Zarkth had access to the theoretical models that had been used to design her training, he might be able to deduce far more about her background than was safe. "It's as if someone took those theoretical frameworks and actually implemented them in a living being," he concluded, turning to look at her directly.
"The question is whether that someone was human or something else entirely." For a long moment, Maya considered her options.
She could maintain her cover and try to deflect his suspicions, but Zarkth's analytical capabilities were clearly far more advanced than she had anticipated. Alternatively, she could take a more direct approach to ensure his silence. Instead, she chose a third option that surprised them both. "What if it was both?" she asked quietly. Zarkth's cybernetic eyes widened slightly.
"Explain. What if humans developed those theoretical frameworks because they needed them? What if we've been preparing for galactic integration longer and more thoroughly than anyone realizes?" It was the closest Maya had come to revealing the truth about her mission, but phrased in a way that suggested broader human preparation rather than individual covert operations. If Zarkth wanted to believe that humans had been secretly developing advanced combat techniques, that was far safer than him suspecting the real scope of her training. "That would be unprecedented," he said slowly. "A species preparing for galactic contact through theoretical military development rather than technological advancement." "Unprecedented doesn't mean impossible."
Zarkth was quiet for a long time, his mechanical eyes flickering as he processed the implications of Maya's suggestion.
Finally, he nodded slowly. "If that's true, then humans are far more dangerous than anyone has realized," he said. "And far more valuable as allies." "Or as enemies," Maya replied softly.
The comment hung between them like a challenge and a warning. Zarkath studied her face with the intensity of someone trying to solve a complex equation, then smiled with what looked like genuine admiration. "I think I'm beginning to understand why they sent you here," he said. "Good luck with your advanced assessment tomorrow. Something tells me the Institute is about to learn more about human capabilities than they're prepared for." As they parted company and returned to their quarters, Maya felt a mixture of satisfaction and concern. She had managed to redirect Zarkath's suspicions in a useful direction, but she had also revealed more about human capabilities than her mission parameters recommended. The advanced assessment would be her first real test at the Institute, and, based on Director Synthara's warnings, it would be far more challenging than anything she had faced at Kepler Station. Maya needed to balance demonstrating enough capability to maintain her cover with avoiding the kind of impossible performance that would trigger deeper investigations. But, as she prepared for sleep in her luxurious quarters, Maya allowed herself a moment of anticipation. Tomorrow she would finally gain access to the kind of advanced systems and classified information that her mission had been designed to obtain. The galaxy was about to discover just how thoroughly humans had been preparing for their role in the larger universe. And Maya was going to be the one to show them. The final phase of her mission was about to begin.